Vrinda has not yet shown up. We should give her a call probably. Although I did tell her that we'll take a few minutes doing our club formalities.
Okay.
So she might be doing dharna outside police commissioner's office.
When does she need to do dharna?
She'll find a reason.
Okay.
If you read her biodata, she specializes in highly activist groups.
Yes, true. Quite an
Hi,
amazing
Rohitesh.
woman.
Hi, Suresh.
Hi, how are you all?
Good, good. How are you, Suresh?
Very good, very good. Mr.
Hi.
President, sir. Ravi,
How are you, Suresh?
very well, very well.
Ravi, you were saying that some people are getting
Hi,
caught
Nadeem.
in Zoom.
Hi,
Hi,
Rohitesh.
Suresh. Hi.
Rohitesh, you're muted.
One who's caught in the Zoom. Isn't that
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Hi, Ravi.
Hi, Rohitesh.
Hi, Rotesh. Hi,
Hi,
Rotesh.
Rohitesh.
How are you?
Hi,
Hi,
hi.
Sanjeev.
Hi, Farooq.
Hi,
Hi, Rohitesh. How are you?
Hi,
Good,
Suresh.
good.
How are you?
man? Good.
Hi, Suresh. How are you?
Very well.
Hi, Baski. Long time.
Hi, Rohitesh.
Yeah, hi, Sanjeev.
Hitesh.
Hi.
Hi. How are y'all?
Why is Millie sitting down so silently?
Huh?
Millie, you can
listening.
say hi. We won't
I'm
feel
just listening.
Hi, Atul.
bad. We won't
Hey,
feel
nothing,
bad.
bhai.
And Bhaskar, I got your joke as well.
Who said hi to me?
Hi, Atul. Hi, Atul.
Hi. Hello.
Hey.
Hi,
Hi,
how are
Anil.
you?
All
Hi,
well, all
Suresh.
well.
How are you, man?
Hi. Hi.
Maybe why don't you get some
Hi.
cakes for all of us?
Some?
Cakes.
Cake.
Hi, everybody.
yes.
Giri
Hi,
here.
Deepak.
Could show us your skill at making cakes.
Hi, Giri.
Thank you.
Hi, hi.
Giri, hello.
Hi, sir.
Hi.
How are you?
Online.
Giriana, namaskara.
Namaskara, namaskara. Happy New Year to everybody.
Hi.
Do you
Shrikant,
also,
happy
everybody?
birthday.
Namaskar. The day to you.
And happy belated
What's happening,
birthday, Diana.
Shrikant, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Hi, Farooq. Long
Where's
time.
he?
Hi, Shrikant.
Hi, Shrikant.
Birthday boy.
Shrikant, birthday wishes to you.
Oh,
Happy birthday,
oh,
Shrikant.
Shrikant, happy
Happy
birthday.
birthday, Shrikant.
Happy Shrikant. Happy birthday.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much, all of you.
Oh, wow. You're looking young.
Yes,
You're
that's what
looking
we
very
have
young.
to ourselves.
Yeah, you.
Nothing wrong.
Rikan, people shed years. You have shed hair.
Hey, Anil, how are you? Hi, Anil. क्या दाढ़ी गड़ी बढ़ा लिया इतना दाढ़ी गड़ी बढ़ा लिया जब चेंज कर लिया शक्ल अपनी
Yeah, this is the COVID look.
COVID look.
COVID look Modi has a bigger दाढ़ी man you should have a bigger दाढ़ी
Anil is saying happy new hair.
oh Anil has got hair on top also is it
Yeah. Check this out.
hey not bad man not bad
Happy birthday, Shrikant. Thank you, Anil. Thank you.
happy birthday Shrikant
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Shrikant.
Vishwana
Thank you.
hi Vishwana how are you good
Vishu.
good how are you
Vishu bhai, good evening. Good evening,
Hi,
Vishu
Vishu.
bhai. Good evening, Vishu bhai.
Happy birthday, Shrikant.
Hey, thanks, DP.
hey Deepak how are you how are you
Bye.
Deepak?
Bye.
You also have a big beard.
Hi,
Yes,
Deepak.
COVID times.
Yeah.
This is a COVID look.
How young Srikanth looks
Without the beard, huh?
with, without a beard.
Like you're just out of some surgery or something.
Oh,
Are you joining, brother?
No.
Oh, you are there, is it? Like you're on your scrubs. Okay, good, good. Thanks. Right.
Hi.
But you know, quite most of the people, they have got this COVID beard. It looks good on them.
yeah
I'll second that. I'll second that. Yeah.
Oh, it does. It does very good. Thank you, gentlemen. It's actually the the laziness that you don't want to shave in the morning, so we're not meeting anybody, so might as well,
Hey, Anil, even if you met somebody what difference does it make man if you have a beard unless you know what you do regularly
Now I have to understand what I do regularly.
I don't know. I've seen you many times.
People, both of you look good.
Not in the Rotary, outside Rotary, I've seen you.
I
So
think Roy, you know more what I do than I do. I know myself.
I've seen you
Nice.
doing it, man. I've seen you doing it. That's why.
What you are saying doing it?
Hey guys, what are you talking about?
What have you seen him doing?
Oh, you should see him.
Right.
You should see him in a 40 hours club.
Oh, okay, okay.
हाँ, उसके लिए काटना पड़ेगा तेरे को.
Okay, Roy. You should know the art of fanning.
Art of panic. Correct.
What do you say?
Can you ask Salil to come down urgently?
Come up.
Giriana, how are you? Keeping?
Fine. Thank you.
Long time haven't seen you. You still maintaining your 100%, is it?
What's wrong with you, man? हम तो कभी छूट गया वो 100%.
छूट गया, पहले छूट गया.
After 28 years, that is 76 plus 28, you know?
हाँ. Our club itself is that old.
That is
We have maintained.
2004.
Ravi, a special prize for Giriana for completing 25 years of 100% attendance.
Not
Yes,
20.
yes.
Salil, can you come down urgently? I need your help. Please come down.
Giri Baba, belated happy birthday.
Thank you, Shrikant. And happy birthday for you today. That is
Thank-
special.
Oh, Shrikant's birthday is today. Is it? No wonder you're smiling so much, Shrikant.
Yeah, somehow got to look happy.
Huh? What if I somehow?
Shrikant, everything is going good for you, man. Markets are going good. Everything is good. So you are happy. Why not?
I am happy. Very
Yeah.
true. Fully
Markets
happy.
markets are booming.
Yeah, I agree.
है ना?
To the extent that it's worrisome now.
No, but Shrikant, I can never understand why the market goes up, why the market comes down. There's a beautiful explanation always, but I don't know what is happening.
The explanation is beautiful as long as you don't know of it. Nobody knows why. Nobody knows why not.
Yes, exactly.
Enjoy the ride. That's all.
Is it because of this Trump menace in US? Money is coming in or how, Shrikant?
Nothing like that. What
Nothing like
happened is banks have introduced so much liquidity with low interest rates that money is sloshing around the world. Not just
Okay.
India.
Oh, not just India. Okay.
All over the world, markets are.
No,
at
I
say,
am
highs.
supposed to be on this Zoom meeting. But I
Even
do
the
not
US
know how
market
to
is going
manage.
up.
All over the world.
Yeah,
Oh.
that is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it's not that the money is coming from America to India. It is US also is doing very well.
Yes,
US markets are booming. Huh? US
Yeah, yeah.
markets are booming.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh,
They are
okay.
also at crazy highs.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Everything that has a price to it, no, is high.
Oh, okay.
Simple.
I mean, the Bitcoin has gone to 34,000.
Yeah, see, even Bitcoin is up.
Yeah.
Not a bit up, it's huge up.
No, Bitcoin is unusually up. It's crazy.
Yeah.
68% or something like
Yeah, in the last 1 hour, I think.
that.
1 hour.
1 hour.
1 month, 1 month.
1 month.
And
Because the Indians are trading in Bitcoin, is it? Now Indians can trade,
Yeah,
is it?
yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can.
You can legally
Shyam,
buy
good
it from
evening.
exchanges.
Hi.
Hi, Shyam. Hi.
Hi.
I think it's about 10 past 7 and we should really call
Hi,
this meeting
Millie.
to order.
How are you, Millie?
I'm fine, Rohitesh. How are you?
Good,
Yeah,
good.
Hi, Millie. Hi,
Hi,
Millie.
happy
Farooq bhai,
birthday.
Farooq bhai, where are you? Are you in San Francisco or what?
Yes,
Not
it's
sure,
in front
sir.
of the bridge.
Huh?
I
San
just got the
Francisco
bridge.
Yeah, इंडिया में थोड़ा रहा करो यार फारूक भाई.
अरे यार तुम मजाक मत करो यार इंडिया में बेंगलोर में आपके नजदीक बैठे हैं.
Because it's surprising फारूक भाई इंडिया में रहा तो surprising हो जाता है.
अरे
उसके लिए
क्यों
पूछा.
मार रहे हैं रोहित यार.
Why are you wearing a jacket or is that also part of the
I know, Farooq, it looks like an overcoat, as though you're
Yeah.
in some cold winter.
I thought you were in San Francisco, the bridge and your coat flying.
And the
No.
clouds-
I actually left the office and came back. I said, let me attend this call. Otherwise, I'll get stuck in the on the way. And sometimes the internet doesn't work properly in the car.
Yeah.
I know.
indeed.
The,
Okay.
the San Francisco traffic is pretty bad at this time.
I know it's terrible.
Folks, can I call this meeting to order, please?
Yes, sir.
From chaos.
Thank you.
Rohit shall not allow anything to be in order.
So I hereby call the 12th Rotary Bangalore Midtown meeting for the current Rotary year to order. Welcome all Midtowners. I think we have among our midst definitely two prospective members whom you have met before, Hemant Kimcha as well as Griffith.
Come.
We are waiting.
I'm on the Zoom meeting. I'm not able to hear or.
Maheshji, we are able to hear you loud and clear.
No, I think he's having some difficulty muting his thing. If somebody can mute, the host can mute it, it'll help him, I think.
Yes, sir, I have done it.
Okay, great.
So we are expecting one more guest today. He's on his way and will join in. But I just wanted to introduce you to Mr. Sailesh Iyengar, who was a managing director of one of the world's leading pharmaceutical companies called Sanofi Aventis. And subsequently, he was head for all of South Asia, including the subcontinent countries. He has expressed his interest to join Midtown, and at the soonest opportunity, we will consider his application. But he's the third member that we have prospectively waiting. As you all know, 16th of February is the GOV, and we hope to induct new members on that day. Moving quickly to announcements. Birthday greetings. Once again, Srikanth, a very happy birthday to you today. This time next year, of course, you will be conducting the meeting.
Sir, I shall present the screen.
Yes, please.
Thank you, President.
There you go.
Yeah.
All
Thanks
the fireworks.
with all the fireworks.
All made in Shivakashi, not in China.
Yeah, they look better because of that.
Let's move on, Shobha.
Yes, sir. Rotarian Malpani.
Rotarian Malpani's birthday is on the 6th. That's tomorrow. A very happy and healthy birthday to him. Following that, on the 7th, we have the ever-present Kamal Kedia, who's been, from the time of his membership, he's been very active with us. Wishing you a very happy birthday, Kamal. And then, of course, on 9th, I'm really looking forward to the 9th to wish PP, which for me has a different connotation with Nadeem, and that shall be unveiled on the 9th, Nadeem. But a very happy birthday to you in advance. So before I request the secretary to make his announcements, I want to say that today is actually a pretty special meeting. The idea was proposed to us by a Midtowner who at the moment wishes to remain anonymous, but will be made known as soon as we decide to go ahead, saying that he wishes to find a way where Midtown can provide a platform to help women from vulnerable backgrounds, from financially weak backgrounds, to get justice from the system. He was driven primarily by the legal process, but in the course of some initial discussions, it appeared to us that while they do need legal help, probably the scope of what they need needs a little more elaboration. And since we as Rotarians have only information on the fringes, today we have invited three practitioners who are deeply embedded in these communities and have been doing outstanding work in these communities with these people to tell us, maybe make a few suggestions to us particularly whether it is legal, whether it is an interaction with other authorities, as to how we can make a lasting impact on their lives. So we have three outstanding speakers. And, of course, Nadeem will be introducing them, but Brinda Adige is an internationally acclaimed activist, particularly in the sphere of women and children. Muhammad Umar from the Mercy Mission. I mean, I didn't know about Mercy Mission until very recently, but they have been doing some really, really outstanding work in the field. And Mr. Venkatram Iyer, who has been working also in some of these communities for a long time. Now, we are fortunate in Midtown to have been working with all three of these individuals in their distinctive NGO structures for various projects of ours. Some of them also have larger relationship with Rotary District. So they are also well accredited to Rotary. So we really look forward to an illuminating talk, and hopefully we will come away with a framework for which, under which Rotary Midtown can proceed. Our secretary, Palani, has regretted his ability to attend today. So I'll request Joint Secretary Anil Lala to make the announcements, please.
So the announcement today are 12 January 2021, we have the 7th board meeting for Rotary year 2021. 16 Jan 2021, we have the toy drive. Midtown, Gen Next and Rotary Bangalore Midtown jointly initiated the project to bring cheer to underprivileged children. Please donate new or good condition used toys, games, puzzles, or cash to make the festival a happy one for these young ones. 10 a.m. we have the toy distribution at Sacred Heart Boys High School. And at 11:30 a.m. distribution of scholarships. This is to be confirmed to the bright students. 17 Jan 2021 Pulse Polio immunization program at Srirampuram Health Center. That's our regular venue. As customary, it will be a meeting for breakfast at Krishna Bhavan at 8:30 a.m. And then we'll proceed to the camp. 20th Jan 2021 distribution of tabs to the government school children. That is government school Atibele, government Urdu school at Yaraguntapalya and Vijaypura school. That's all the announcements for the secretary for today.
Thank you very much, Anil. It's very clear. Yeah, the scholarship to be confirmed is only because the Literacy Committee has still got to do its homework in terms of going through the backgrounds of the suggested children, but we do hope to be able to do a minimum of 50 scholarships that day.
Wow.
So I will request all of you, it should be a festive day. It's around Pongal, and our idea was that, Christmas has already been festive, and on Pongal, if we can give toys and to the little ones and the means to education for the older ones, that will be a good beginning. So without further ado, I'll request Past President Nadeem to introduce the speakers. It is a fireside chat format. Venkat will moderate and put forward questions to both the speakers, and both of you are at liberty to answer from your different perspectives, please. Nadeem.
Good evening, Midtowners. It's my pleasure to introduce three prominent social workers who have also participated with us in various social activities. So I will start off with Brinda. She has pioneered India's first child protection helpline called Makkala Sahaya Vani in Police Commissioner's Office in 1997. MSV has mentioned in a UN agency report in 2002. She has pioneered training module and workshop for gender sensitive people, wholly supported by UNICEF. This was included as syllabus in Karnataka Police Training Academies, which found a mention in IBDAW, CEDAW, the discrimination against women. Won a fellowship from Ford on community leadership and international relations in New York. Presently, she is coordinating Safer Cities Free from Violence on Women and Children with reference to legal access to justice, victim compensation, and witness protection, supported by Hans Seidel Foundation, an arm of the Bavarian Parliament. She is part of Mukti, an alliance to end human trafficking and bonded labor. And as I told you, Midtown works with Brinda to fund deserving school children through financial intervention. Mohammad Umar is an engineer of distinction who worked in Germany before returning to Bangalore, India to do his calling. He is a co-founder and convener of Mercy Mission, a coalition of frontline NGOs doing human service for humanity in the most vulnerable sections. Mercy Missions shot to fame in COVID times by some unprecedented acts, like humane and dignified final passage to those who succumb to the virus. They operate 24/7 control center for emergencies like ambulance, plasma, oxygen, testing, hospital bed allocation, HERS, etc. They are providing cooked food for over 1,000 people 3 times a day. They were lead implementation partners for the record-breaking Health Screening project recently undertaking under leadership of Rotary Bangalore Midtown. And finally, we come to Venkat. Venkat quit a lucrative career with Unilever in the Sultanate of Oman to pursue his calling to help the needy. As the managing trustee of Swabhiman, a registered public charitable trust, he manages 2 schools for underprivileged kids, 2 charity clinics, a computer center that provides computer literacy to hundreds of kids, manages an interest-free lending to about 300 housewives. Women and youth empowered programs provide 5,000 cooked meals to the most needy and hungry each day, and provides grocery kits to about 1,000 deserving families each month. Midtown operates its e-learning library through Venkat, who also implements the club's daily cooked food program. So we look forward to an interesting chat from all 3 of the speakers. Thank you so much.
Venkat, please take over.
Brinda and Umar.
Yes. Good evening.
It's a pleasure to be on the platform that you both are. Such long CVs you both hold. Very honored to be with you, Brinda. And good to see you at the beginning of the new year. So, Brinda, you have been championing the causes of women for a long time now, especially the women from the marginalized and the vulnerable communities of Bangalore, as much as I know, but now I realize through the CV that across the country, So, Brinda, the first question comes to you. India is a country that is deeply steeped in tradition and culture. Our young girls are told at a very young age that you have to be a pativrata. Your husband will be a Parmeshwar. And when you get married and you get into your in-laws' families, you leave behind everything that your parents gave you. You're not supposed to get back in touch with them for anything at all and treat your in-laws as parents. Now, especially in the lower income communities where the traditions are very deeply, stitched, how difficult, Brinda, is it for a young bride who's being abused by her in-laws to actually take courage to break the shackles of these tradition and reach out to organizations like you for either counseling or support? The reason I ask you, Brinda, this is that these young women are losers both ways. If she wins the case against the in-law, she's still a loser because she's lost her husband. And if she wins the case or loses both ways, she's lost both her family and her in-laws' family. So she is now considered neither a pativrata nor a, woman of substance. She's a rebel. Can you throw some light on this, Brinda, as to how these women can break their shackles?
Thank you, Venkat. At the outset, I think we need to place on record, irrespective of which religion anybody belongs to, which caste and which class, patriarchy is steeped in every household. You will find very, very few homes that might talk of, looking at women on par with men. And the customs, the religion, tradition, all of this that you mentioned is not just in the lower middle class, economic lower middle class or middle class. It's across sections. It's just that how they handle these issues becomes slightly different for most of them. One thing that we have to place on record is that every time it is this woman who is at fault. It is the woman who has to anyway take all the blame, irrespective of what may be the cause or the factors that led to her present situation. From my experience, I can tell that it is so much probably easier when we are working in the slums, because there the women really, to a large extent, have been much more empowered. When I use this word empowered, it is they are willing to make a choice to say that they will live by themselves, because often they will find themselves abandoned or deserted by their husbands. Now, the problem arises in the middle class and the upper middle class, where they have to fit within that societal good woman framework. And that becomes very, very difficult. And like you said, she is neither Prativrata nor she is this good woman that the society is looking at. And for herself, as a person, there are several challenges. But we also find, irrespective all the economic strata the women come from, over 55 to 60% of them are not keen or interested in breaking the family, if I may use that phrase. People say that, oh, the divorce rates have gone high, up. Against what is this statistics? You're looking at divorce rates vis-a-vis 1990 to 2020. How do you look at it? So one bit we have to understand is over 65% of the women want to continue to live with that family. And when I say family, it includes the mother-in-law, father-in-law, and the husband, or anybody else also in that family. The other part, of course, is probably the situation is so terrible that they really have no other option but to move out from that family. It is the 65% of them who find that they are unable to get the requisite support that they need, because they are pushed to the edge to say, you live in this situation without challenging or raising your voice. And what we have found is, if the woman comes out once or twice, speaks to her friends or her other neighbors or in and around relatives, the in-laws or the husband's family realizes there is somebody to ask for her, to demand and say that this is right, this is wrong, this is not acceptable. That is missing because, again, our culture and tradition is that when a woman has been married off and sent off, the girl's family will not interfere. That's why we see, hear all these dialogues. Now that I send you off as a bride, when you return to this, if you ever return to this house, it should be only your arthi. So you can't be walking back into this biological home of yours, irrespective of how bad the in-laws are. So here what we are trying to do is to say, okay, so will you change and will you live by yourself somewhere, which is not easy at all. In today's India, even, and it is as difficult as it was in yesterday's India. What we feel is everybody does not want to go to court. The court bit of it is a very small number, and it comes right in the end after trying out all of these so-called traditional methods or the traditional form of arbitration. And we find that the traditional forms of arbitrations could be done through different ways. Now, the family court has also, over the last 20, 25 years, introduced something called as mediation. Sadly, the mediation doesn't happen in that manner in which gives this woman the support or the upper hand. It's always telling this woman, no, why wouldn't you adjust? I mean, you're already 45 years old. Why are you not adjusting? You're just 25 years old. Why are you not adjusting? So I can be 65 years old and I have to adjust. Or I could be younger and I must adjust. So that bit of it is where we find the challenges are when we go to court. But much before that, we are also looking at a very high number of women who commit suicide or who are pushed to commit suicide or who are plainly murdered. And all of that, where the police is concerned, falls under UDR, unnatural death. So there's rarely any investigation. And again, coming back to culture and traditions, we find over 35% of these UDR's families will get the younger sister of that woman who got murdered or who committed suicide to the same man. Because there are children and there's nobody to look after those children. So the support that we extend to these women now range much before the law, much before, let's say, the criminal justice system that we are talking of when we talk of legal support. But there is a lot of legal support that we can ask and we can demand for, and support can be extended to the women even now without going all the way to court, because we have similar laws. So later on, I could explain what those laws are and how we can intervene.
Venkat, are you on?
Venkat?
Yes. Umar, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Umar, hi, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Brindaji, for the very enlightening talk.
Yes, it was very, very enlightening. So, Umar, now that you work in similar communities, we are very keen on knowing the kind of abuses and the injustices that most women face in the communities very commonly. And when they approach you for all these injustices and abuses, how do you deal with them and how do you reconcile a lot of these cases? Is it possible for you to share some information on this?
Of course, Venkatji, I will. So thank you, Brindaji, for a very nice overview on the subject. And as Brindaji rightly said, right, there's this patriarchal culture, even within the slums. But as she said, the slums literally are run by women. This was, to our surprise, we found that they are the essential economic wheels in the slums, right? So they're the ones who are working hard in the morning, they're again going out to work and then coming back outside. See, some of the most frequent challenges we face is one of husband desertion, right? The husband kind of leaves and run away. The woman doesn't know what to do, right? And most of the time this happens once he's had, let's say, more than 2 or 3 girl childs and the man disappears. We don't know most of the time where he goes. Either he moves into another slum, another dwelling, he marries and he settles there, or he disappears. The second, this is a much bigger issue. Here the legal angle is quite important because the man is not dead yet. The woman is legally married to the man, and the man has just absconded. So this prevents her from, probably renewing or entering into a new marriage with another man. And the complex issue of how is she going to manage all the kids without the absence of a man who is there but not there. He's like a ghost. And in several instances, one of the biggest challenges we face is this man appears once in 4 months, once in 6 months, makes all this tall and long promises to this woman, and then again moves out. And the woman, being who she is, accommodates him, forgives him for what he's done for this short period of time, being the generous, kind-hearted one who she is. And then the man disappears again. And this cycle keeps on continuing for years together without a legal closure, right? So a man, essentially, this is one of the biggest mental abuses we see and the physical abuse we see of a woman. So this is one of the complex challenges, Venkatji, we see in the slums. So here, what we try to do is, as an intervention, we try to harness community support as the first level of intervention, right? As Brindaji rightly said, there are a lot of steps before you go into a legal intervention, right? So first thing is to convince the woman that, look, this man is not right for you if he's doing this behavior with you. It doesn't mean you have to be that Pativrata lady, I have to keep serving him, even though if he comes once in a year, he completely neglects me, he completely doesn't take care of my children, he doesn't care about where we live, whether we are living, whether we are dying. So how do you get this stuff out of the cultural set that somebody who is doing injustice to you, and even if it is someone in your own family, then you have every right to say no. It's not a one-way road wherein once you enter into a marriage, there is no returning back. So women should be, we educate the women that she has a choice in the form of marriage where she can call it off if she's not interested. Doesn't mean it has to be always from the other side, that a man has to get fed up and say no. The freedom is equal on both the sides. So the first step we do is, kind of make the women aware that she doesn't have to spend her life like this. Second is we try to harness community support for such issues, wherein we tell the community that, look, the woman needs to be supported, not the man. Once he comes after 4 months, the community needs to catch him, make him aware, explain to him his responsibilities, and probably legally free the wife, right? So that she can find probably another man, or she wants to live alone with her children, she has to live. This is one very common and a complex challenge we face, across the slums. The second one, of course, is when the husband dies a little too early. And this often happens in the urban slums of Bangalore, that either because of addiction, or because of substance abuse, or the people there are involved in this locally shelter rowdy systems, wherein some people die very early, or they are put into jails for a long amount of time for a crime which they have committed or they have not committed. And a typical case study for us is now the DJ Hurley violence case, where more than 400 men are behind the bars. And there is a typical, the UAPA has been applied on them. So there's no hope for this 400 women. And now she's legally wedded to a man who she has no access to. They have children, but children have no access to a dad. Now they don't know what is the future looking like for them, right? Because there's no closure, legal closure happening. There's no mental closure happening. There's no economic closure happening. There's no physical closure happening. So these can happen both with widows as well as, people who have gone away into the jails. Now, what happens after she dies? The woman is so vulnerable now once the man disappears, either in the case of death or in the case of a long absence, that the family member tries to usurp her property. Whatever is legally hers, somebody comes and says, no, now your husband is gone, you have to leave this house. Please vacate this house. We don't care. Your husband was there, it was his problem, it is not my problem. So this happens sometimes from both the sides. And the woman, when she tries to goes back to her family side, her mother's side, then they say, no, humne to shadi karke de diya, now madhve maad kotta admel nam responsibility aayi to. Why are you coming back to us? Don't come back to us. Please go try to live with them, try to fight with them. So we get rehabilitation cases of these women a lot, saying they have children, the husband is dead. Now they cannot pay rent. Now and most of them are also unskilled. This is one more problem. Either they're unskilled or they're not going into structured jobs, because again, probably in some cases, the man would have not allowed the women to work. So she was pretty much dependent on the man. Now the scenario is that the man is gone and she doesn't know what to do. And she becomes a perfect, exploitation for other men. And this Sangha systems wherein, they come in and they try to give a heavy interest-based loan to such women, they're the perfect candidate for giving these huge interest-based loans. For a destitute woman whose husband has gone deserted, a woman whose husband dies pretty early in age, and a man who's probably disappeared, like, in a jail term or something like that due to some crime. So these are then exploited by the Sangha systems. So our effort has been that how do you save them from this Sangha system? So Sangha systems is something, where you have this heavy interest-based loans. It's called as meter buddy in Kannada, right? So I give you money in the morning, and in the evening you're supposed to be returning some money. And if you don't return after one time, it runs like an autometer, right? It keeps on increasing 5 rupees, 10 rupees, 15 rupees. So this is a vicious cycle wherein they don't know that such loans are illegal. So they cannot go and complain. But also there are no legal ways in which they can go and get a small micro loan to do an entrepreneurial job, or, earn with livelihood and dignity. So these are the second type of issues, we get, which we try to solve by, sometimes we have this in our system, we have the little zakat money. So we try to collect the zakat money and we try to give it to individuals. And in many of the other cases, women approach us for micro loans. And we also provide them micro loans to do some of their small businesses. But at the same time, we also educate them, right, that this is not done, that once you have the system, you need to somehow get out of it rather than getting stuck into this. It is like a black hole. So these are 3 typical cases, Venkatji. And one more I want to very importantly highlight is the case of the scams. A lot of these Ponzi scams which come into the slum, the typical example being an IMA scam, right? So what happens is they ask these poor people to give a small amounts of token money in the hopes that they're going to get unreasonable returns. Now it looks all hunky-dory until the system works, but once this Ponzi schemes close, a majority of them have no clue what to do legally, right?
Very money.
So this is the third kind of request we get, that we've lost a lot of money in the Sangha system or Ponzi schemes, and legally they don't know what to do, of course, right? So how to restart the system? So that's a lot of years of savings is gone. Somebody might have saved for a girl's marriage. Somebody might have saved to, buy a new home. So now these are the typical issues. So, but these are quite complex, but I've just listed 3 of you for your immediate answer, Venkatji.
Oh, so thank you so much, Omar.
Yeah.
This is for the Rotarians. A lot of them maybe who needed this first-hand information from Omar and Brinda both. So thanks, Omar, for enlightening us on this again. So the challenges are many, and working in the lower income communities is not so easy. Brinda and you will agree. Now, one of the things, Brinda, that I wanted to know from you is that of all the women that you work with, what percentage of women actually know of their rights, and how many of them, because they know their rights, are able to come and approach you and ask you for help? And the supplementary question to this, Brinda, is when there is a very heinous crime, like say a rape or a burning, are these women able to come out and speak on their own, or there is still a taboo about a rape and a burn case and the woman is never able to expose her families? Can we know about these things, Brinda?
Yeah, sure. So beginning with the first one, there is also a program that we've been doing with women for the last 8-9 years. We call it the Deliberative Dialogue Program. And in the LR Nagar slum, as well as the Ambedkar and Rajendra Nagar, we have about 60 to 75 women who've gone through something like this. And largely the program is for women to become confident to speak. And to speak means you speak up about the violence that you are suffering, not because you want support, help, and things like that, but because you need to move out of that phase of what other people will think of me. And that is the biggest problem. 1. 2, the need for you to speak up is also important, because many times, like Omar pointed out, if the husband deserts the wife, she will keep telling lies, saying that, I met him, I saw he's coming, he's gone to his ur, he'll come back. Because otherwise, there are local thugs in all of these slums who will just walk into the house of this woman, hearing 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 months, the husband has not come, walk in and say, don't worry, everything will be taken care of, because today onwards, you're my wife. And it's just a statement made, done, and gone. Right now, we are handling some of the cases where this one fellow has about 34 wives. So when we
Wow.
asked, are you white? I know, and with due respect, this man is a Hindu. When we asked the women, so how did the marriage happen? Because, you know, at the end of the day, we are okay, even if it's a Gandharva style marriage. No, no, nothing like that. No marriage. This man comes, makes this announcement and walks out. The day he calls, I must go to his house. And that is the biggest fear. And they will never talk about it. And other women will also not speak or, you know, treat her badly, because if somebody gets to know that somebody came and told that man that these people treated her badly, they will be walloped, I mean, literally beaten and, you know, threatened and all that. So we need to understand two parts of the story that is happening there in the slums that we are working in. One is traditional, cultural, whatever. You continue, you have to be a good woman, irrespective of how terrible your man was and is. So this good woman is something that you have to put up over there. It doesn't matter what your age is, what your religion is. And that is why it is very difficult, Omar, for us to tell this woman, walk out of the marriage. We are finding that women who are 40 years and above stick to this. You know, it can... They just don't mind that man having even 3 wives, 4 wives in the same area and the next cross, maybe the 4th house, as long as he comes to my house twice a week. People all around see me. I'm still the Sumangali. My Mangal Sutra is intact. So nobody should come near me because I'm a good woman. I feed this fellow when he comes once in 2 days. That is one bit of it. We are also contending with, and we are very happy, the younger ones, 35 and below, are very happy to say, get out. We have had enough of you. And probably that's a phase across maybe in the society. But we're also telling the younger ones also feel that having an affair and moving out is okay. Or having an affair and continuing that affair is also fine as long as I'm married to somebody else. So I'm a good woman, but it's also okay. That is a dilemma also that we are facing. The next part of it, Venkat, that you asked me, if they are raped, if they are abused, if they are assaulted, the first thing they do is call us. Yes, they will call and they will tell us. What they don't want is a police complaint, because the police make such a big natak and drama about everything. The police are supposed to follow the rules of confidentiality, of secrecy, of, you know, following what you have to follow by law, not any charity. But then the police make a big noise about it because they also know that when they make this kind of a noise, the case is not in their responsibility. They don't have to investigate, they don't have to arrest, because at the end of the day, the arrest will have to be made, and it is this man who goes, and this man will always have one thug behind him or 2 thugs who tell the police what to do, what not to do. And so we also have learned now to become thugs. So when this happens, we are again in a dilemma. A, you have to register a case. Only then you will get the benefits that you can get from the government. B, you need medical help. You need to be admitted in the hospital. There's nobody who's paying you for it if you don't register. So many times, 40% of our cases really don't see the light of any kind of justice. I would like to use the word over here, substantive justice and procedural justice. So we're talking of a procedural justice if you are going to court, but substantive justice, where my husband says, yes, I have made a mistake, I've committed this, whatever, I'm sorry, but I'm here now to look after you and the family. And then some kind of a family continues over there. Families together and whatever, she gets her support from the hospital. But many times we don't get it. Like 40% of it, nothing happens. So we are stuck with a family that requires support, a mother that is invalid, literally invalid, children who need support, who need to go to school. The mother probably can't look after, so we need to find hostels. And very often, we need to understand at the end of the day, irrespective of the kind of poverty children live in, hostels are still fake. They take away your freedom. they also treat you with, condescending kind of benevolence. You've come from the slums, so put up with whatever here it is. That freedom, that independence that children enjoy in their homes is not something that they are, that is not respected. The experiences that these children come with. So you very often have these children, fair enough, because they come and tell you other things that happen in the hostels also. The problem is the need to report, because the community, like you mentioned, Venkat, in the beginning of this session, thing to provoke. You can be 6-year-old, you can be 12-year-old. You would have done something to have sexually abused you. Of course, now we're trying to bring that in. Is not the fault of the girl or the woman. It's taking time. Probably of unlearning that requires to be done. But this is something that we're.
Brinda, I think you may be having a. Brinda, sorry to interrupt, but I think you have some issue with bandwidth. You're coming and going in spots.
Okay, am I clear now?
Yes. No, if necessary, you can just put off your camera as well.
Okay, that
sometimes that improves the.
Yes. Is it better now?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So there is child sexual abuse, there is incest, there is a lot of domestic violence. And what these people want, especially the ones who are living in the slum, what they want is some immediate support and help when that incident occurs. And that is what my organization strives to give. Because we say that if you call us, we will be there in 10 to 20 minutes, and we will be there. And we will intervene, irrespective of who that man comes with. He could have the police on his side, he could have the local thugs or whatever. We will intervene, and we will see that police do everything that must be done by law for the protection of the children and that woman. That done, we now also work along with the police and the Karnataka State Legal Services Authority, where we say that instead of going all the way to family court for mediation, because mediation has to be decided by the judge, and the judge gives you a time and the counselor and all of it. And that's a huge, long process. We say that we will do it here with a lawyer or without a lawyer. We get women from within the slum itself, because there are several women who are, who have that leader position or leader figure and have some kind of a authority and power over there. We get 3 or 4 of them sit together, and for some time now, since COVID, we haven't been doing it. We call it the Nari Panchayat.
Mm-hmm.
And the Nari Panchayat is one where from the boys' side or the man's side, we have 2 people, and from the girl's side, we have 1 or 2 people. So we always try to show that the man's side has probably the double say in whatever this panchayat has to decide on. That way, we are telling the man that we are not shortchanging you in any which way. But we have somebody from the organization also who sits there to ask those difficult questions, which the panchayat may not ask or finds it difficult to ask.
True.
That apart, we are finding that sometimes we have to take the matter at least by book to court. They may not run through the court case entirely, but at least to show that this case has been presented in court. And family court does not require a lawyer, but for the sake of saying that, we've taken the matter into the justice system, we show all of those papers and affidavits saying that it's gone to court and this will take you this many years, lawyers will cost you so much. Now, would you want to compromise? Would you now like to sit down, arbitrate, and decide on something? If you want counseling, then we are here to give you that counseling. Many times it is that immediate support that they want, especially at night or late in the evening. And
So
that becomes
Brinda
very
and
difficult.
Umar, Brinda and Omar, but you all are painting a really very realistic picture of the problems on the ground. Can we also just, focus on how we as Rotary can help? I mean, you all are doing an outstanding job, but how can we as Rotary Midtown and perhaps Rotary in general, how can we strengthen your hands? How can we make your life easier to make those women's lives easier?
Raviji, I think as Brindaji said, this is a two-tier solution if you ask me. Look, the one tier is that availability of emergency relief and support to the women, right? Saying that, look, we are here for you. That assurance has to be there at some level. As Brindaji said, somebody calling the hotline and you presenting yourself in 15 minutes, it's extremely important. And this is an immediate need. As per me, it has to be addressed. It has to be strengthened, as a hotline, as a helpline. And second solution which we have been working on, actually we did a little bit of an RCA. We went into the root causes and we tried to see, look, why such behavior is existing in the slums, why a woman is not willing to take help, right? So there are multiple complex socio-economic challenges associated with it. See, number one, we found out that if a woman has to go fight for her case, fight for her justice, then who will take care of her house? If I'm going to a court, if I'm going to a family court, if I'm going to a police station, right, and if I'm spending my one day, most of these people in the urban slums are hand-to-mouth lifestyle. Jo Kambali bai aati hai, if she comes 1 day or 2 day leave, then I will say, my wife will say, hey, no, she didn't come for 2 days. So the challenge is, how do you address these challenges which they have along with the legal support system? So we also have to provide a little social support system to that. So what we have been doing in order to provide this local social system is, one is, of course, to tie up with, like what Ms. Brinda said, with such agencies who are providing the immediate relief. Second is community-based long-term relief, right? So we are looking at holistically addressing this problem these women have. For example, somebody who's a widow or a husband has deserted. We say, look, we will take care of your child's education. We will take care of some food support for you. Like, for example, what Venkatji does, what we do, we provide them monthly ration. This is some form of social security for them. And then we try to get them their entitlements. Most of them would not have their Aadhaar card. They would not even have their marriage certificates, for example, stored properly so that legally jaake kahin pe present kare. If you want to do a divorce, people will not have their official documents. They just got married. So this is one issue. So we help them with their entitlements. So we are looking at a holistic support angle wherein, one, we give them awareness. Second, we give them social support. Third, we connect them to agencies who could be of immediate help to them. And, fourth is always give them this counseling, right? There is a local support system we want to create, like how there is a Sangha system where they can go and ask for these loans. We create a group of community-based women where these women can get together and discuss their problems, and kind of create some mental health facilitation within the slums. So we are doing it in a few slums wherein we have allocated somebody called angels to each one of these families. We're doing it as a pilot for few families where they get to share their problems early on until it becomes more complicated. Good. So trying to give them local based solution. So I think if we can have a mix and match combination of immediate relief, as well as looking at a long-term holistic relief, which is essentially nothing but developing and changing the environment around the slum communities, we will have a long and a far-reaching impact. Over to you, Brindaji. This was very 2 cents of mine which I added.
So one last question to both you, Umar and Brinda. Both of you must answer this. Now, does education make any difference to the lives of women? Would you think that a more educated woman can take care of herself a little better than, say, somebody who's illiterate? Umar first and then Brinda.
Yeah, thank you, Venkatji. I think, see, this is a $1 million question. And for me, I would like to say, probably redefine education a little bit, right? So when I say education in the existing vulnerable neighborhoods, one is targeting the existing women who are not educated, who have not gone through a formal education system. For them, we need to have an education that they understand, right? Creating local awareness sessions, going and talking to them, creating community help groups and making them aware of their rights, and also making them aware of what they're entitled to get from a marriage, what they're entitled to get from a society, and what they're entitled to get as a support from the government and other NGOs. So this is the kind of empowerment we need to do in the form of education to them. And second in line is, of course, in the government schools, or in the vicinity of the schools where the slums are happening, doing an early intervention among the young girl childs, letting her know about good touch and bad touch. For example, we've done about trainings on good touch and bad touch. How do you deal with complex challenges you are having in your family, right? For a young child like that, this is a very serious issue. That kya karo mera baap pita hai to nan en madli nam appa kuditare nam amma, and sometimes even the mother drinks because she is so fed up of life, she also drinks. So how do these small children handle with these issues? For example, they see a father come only once in 6 months. So we need to also put in enough education in the form of women and child, in the form of the schooling education in the slums also, right? And apart from that, a little bit of moral education also has to be included as part of their, either both for elders as well as youngsters. So education has to be tailored as per their intellects. And then I would think that it would be a much more workable and a long-lasting solution. Again, a three-tier approach. One is for the young generation who is now growing up in that slums. One is for the existing middle to older generation who have little bit understanding on how it works. Third is, I feel you cannot do much about this already elderly women who are there and whose minds are actually set. So if we can try to target these three, and in parallel, in conjunction, tell a man also create some awareness training program for the men as well as for the women in the slums, it is going to have a far long-reaching impact. And hopefully, we will together be able to make a better slum environment. Thank you, Venkat.
Thanks. Brinda?
Yeah. So education is really needs to be redefined, and the connotation is very wide where Global Concerns India is concerned. Primarily, we believe that scholastic education, enrolling in formal schools is a must, because that is one of the first ways to reduce children being pushed into child labor or being forced to work with their parents, whatever may be the kind of work that they may be doing. And we have seen that during the COVID time, a lot of school children have also been pushed back into doing other kinds of jobs. So when we talk of education, formal scholastic education is a must, and we support about 1,600 children in schools, basically supporting part of their school fees. But we also believe that assisted learning program and lifelong learning components are a must, like Omarji pointed out. And this is a program that we run in the schools. Earlier we used to do that, but now we are running at the shelter itself, which is in LR Nagar. Every 2 hours, we are running a batch of about 200 or over 200 children who come there in about 6-7 batches. And like he pointed out, there is a little bit of language, arithmetic, and all of it, which is the simple things that they must not lose touch on and learn again. So that happens for an hour. But the next hour also has to do a lot of drawing. It has a lot of handwriting, reading, poetry, recitation, speaking, elocution. So all of this is something that we do. But with all of this, what we insist is punctuality. You have to be clean. Your books have to be covered, no bad language at all. Because what has happened with children in the slums is use of bad language, throwing a fit or beating somebody up. This part of the landscape because of the violence that they see in their homes. I'm sure there is similar violence in also all our homes also. So I'm not saying that it is only contained in the slums. But what we do over here is to tell them that you can come and talk to us. You talk to us about a lot of different things, even when you feel that some way your father or your uncle or your older brother touches you and it is not, and you don't like it. And so we teach them also to protect themselves. Good touch, bad touch, both for boys and for girls. Talking about gender, talking about respect, talking about equality is also to tell them why they have to be heroes and heroines when we want them to be good human beings. So even though I'm a woman rights activist, we absolutely believe that boys and girls, men are an equal and important part of this journey towards gender equality and dignity and stuff like that. So we tell boys and girls that you have to be a hero and you have to be a heroine, which means if you feel and if you see that some other child, some other boy is being touched or has been treated badly, you need to stand up and ask or question. And if you see that it has happened to a girl, stand and question. If you see that's happened to a child, do question about it. or come and inform us. So this is what is we believe to be part of that education. And the other part of our education, like I explained to you, is to do with women. We have very few men. The meetings that we have, because we have children going to school, and that is not enough when we have parents who are illiterate and their aspirations are so high. So every month we have meetings with parents, and in these meetings we have been encouraging men to come. And I'm happy to say that about 50% of the monthly meetings consist of men.
Oh, good.
And they have to sit together with women. Earlier, we used to have 4 or 5 chairs in this. We normally have all our meetings sitting on the floor, and we have 4 or 5 chairs for some of the women who are unable to sit on the floor. But when I say some of the women, it's usually the grandmothers, because some children do not have both their parents, and so the grandmothers have to come and attend these meetings. We found that, all the women will sit on the floor, and the men, irrespective of what their age is, would sit on the chair. And then we had to say, sorry, these chairs are only for women, and that too for grandparents, grandmothers. But if there is a grandparent, man, he cannot sit on the floor, he can sit on the chair. Over the years, we have seen that, okay, these men automatically will come and occupy one of the spaces on the floor and not take the chair. And that itself for us is a learning and probably a teaching that has gone across. So all of this is, we network with other organizations. Right now, we're networking with Christ University, where they are doing a project on solid waste management, where they are telling women and men and everybody in the LR Nagar slum, and it is just now started in 11th Cross, to segregate waste. And this segregation, of course, in the beginning, it was not very favorably looked at, saying, you want us to have 2 dustbins, our house is very small, this, that, all kinds of, these kind of logistic issues. But now they have realized that they can actually segregate waste. So this is a part of the education that we are telling everybody. While the women and the men and the families agreed that this is a possibility, we now find that the BBMP garbage collectors are a bigger menace to this education, because they come there and they don't segregate the waste that they take into their vans.
Mixed waste.
So when we are looking at education, we're also looking at all of these things. We even try and tell them to grow some medicinal plants and stuff like that in pots just outside their homes. We are also trying to tell them, don't throw any of the plastics and waste into the drain, because LR Nagar is bang on that huge drain that runs through LR Nagar and Rajendra Nagar. So education, I believe, is all of this, as well as telling them about their rights and their responsibilities, because elections keep coming and keep going. And we have this major issue of, who gave me the most number of money, and now I decide who I vote for. There is a small percentage of people who will take money from everybody and decide who they want to vote for on their own. So there's no guarantee that I will give you 5,000 and you will vote for me. Because if they like somebody else, they would vote only for that somebody else. But the money is gone. Though we run different kinds of education programs, like My Vote Is Not for Sale, I really think that we don't have that kind of a stance there to tell them that don't take money and please vote, because that is your responsibility, your right and all that. Because that, I think, is too much of a privileged notion that we might want to thrust on those people. But we know that there are a lot of them who take money and take goods from everybody during election times, and then they still choose that they want to vote for somebody else, which I think may be step 1 towards making the decision that they're not scared of voting for somebody else, irrespective of what they might get from others. But like we said, Anganwadis are something that we also work with, because we insist that we try and see that the government teachers do what they must do. Many of the Anganwadis don't have all the children there. Only few children come. The teachers are supposed to go house to house and get the parents to send the children there. Sometimes Anganwadi teachers come in very late and women have to go to work very early and they don't know what to do. So the older girl is asked to stay back and look after that baby, which means we are now adding this cycle where this child will not go to work or do not go to school because the child has to look after this other baby. So education, I think, is so encompassing that we can't look at it as one, just as one part of a scholastic education.
Thank you
I
so
think
much,
we are
Brenda.
running seriously
Yes.
short of time. It's been fascinating and eye-opening. I have been continuously getting messages on my phone. It's opened the eyes to many of us over here as to what the problems are. So I really want to spend 1 minute really with the problems are immense and very varied in nature. But would both of you or all three of you agree that perhaps the first step that an organization like Rotary can do can be perhaps to assist these people to understand what their rights and entitlements are, and then, work with organizations like yourselves to give that strength on the street and at the household level, which we cannot do.
So Ravi, I would think that one of the earliest things that we must do is engage with the youth in the community, the college going youth especially. If we can empower them by giving them the information on their rights and duties, I think that would be a good beginning. Like Umar said, boys have to be equally taught as to be how to be good human beings as much as the women. In fact, the boys even more than women. So let us think of some programs where we can bring in youth in the community and address them on a sustained basis, not just a one-off program, to keep them engaged with us and more importantly, to help them understand their rights and duties both.
Good. So I'd just like to add one point here, Raviji. We've kind of designed a few models called as the Seva Kendra, Health Kendra, and the Skill Kendra model in every slums. So which essentially target around this holistic development around this cause. So as you rightly said, the first thing would be that, each slum is slightly different from its own complexities. For example, DJ Halli, the complexities are different. LR Nagar, it's different. Aval Hallis and other side, the slums are a little different. So the interventions, what we do is we do fine tuning. And through the Seva Kendras, we first get them their legal entitlements. While they were getting them the legal entitlements, we make them aware and educate them about what rights they have from the system and from the government. And then we, kind of build up that small, knit the community together so that they can help each other out. So if we can kind of design the system, and then we have local partners in different slums who have, been working in the slums for a long time, then if Rotary can support to take this model and spread it across community. For example, the Health Kendra model I discussed with you last time we met. If you can take this along, right, this can be stitched together and slightly varied for every slum, and added to that, as Brindaji said, add that immediate relief component, and then as Venkatji said, add this long-term relief component where we can use the existing youth in the community, existing educated people in the community, train the trainers, and then kind of make that community into a sustainable one. So this would be something which Rotary, I think, can think at that top view, eagle view level. We can plan it like that, and then you can use the hands and legs, which are the NGOs we already know are working there, and kind of design and implement a system. And we can start with a small POC. That's my suggestion. Thank you. And I could share some of the models which we've made with you later on, Raviji, which you can probably share with the other Rotary folks.
Please do. Please do.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Brinda, anything to add?
Yes, I agree with both Venkat and Omar, but let's also remember that a lot of young girls are also pushed into marriages at a very early age because the assumption is that they might, bring, shame to the family if they fall in love. So it's important that we start talking to our young girls also. It is important to have men with us, but remember, often women are looked at as the burden, and marrying them off to in South India, we have this custom of marrying off my daughter to my younger brother. And that is very, very common over there. If we can get these people to start understanding everything, the politics of it, the economics and the health. Why a girl must not get married at a young age, and what is the kind of support she can get if her parents are pushing her into something like this. In this area, we also need to address the issue of the local thugs. And they are there, whether we like it or not. We need to understand that they are there and we have to work with them. It's not that they can co-opt us into them, but they need to understand that there is a certain amount of fear that we can also, bring to those guys where the police and all of that is concerned. So I believe that there are organizations who are working there. If Rotary can support these organizations, we can't have full-time staff because they are very expensive. We can't give 25,000 or 30,000 to people to work full-time. But if we can support volunteers, so saying that you are available when a call comes and you take that case through a logical conclusion. You reach that spot where that woman is there, you get the police if need be, you try and speak with the families if they are there, and see that the family and the woman is safe till we reach a certain decision. And that requires about 8 to 9 days per case when we are looking at it. I'd be very happy if Rotary could support somebody like that. I know it's not easy. It's not also easy to find women who are mobile, who have a two-wheeler, who will reach that spot, who are well-versed with the law, and who will go to the police station if need be, negotiate with the Hoysala and with the local leaders, their families. So this, if you can think of something like that, it would be nice.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'll just open the floor very briefly for questions. Shobha, can you unmute everybody?
Yes, sir.
So if anybody has any questions, obviously there seems to be a lot of work to be done in this area. I think it's come as a shock to a lot of us as to what the reality on the ground is. I think I will work with all three of you to try and create a workable model where a meaningful intervention can happen from the Rotary side. So it will be experimental, Umar, as you said, the proof of concept. We can take one area, one particular kind of problem and see how Rotary can make a difference to that, and then look at ways to possibly roll it out. Please do share what you have, and maybe we'll have a smaller meeting of concerned people, including all three of you, shortly to discuss specific steps.
Surely.
With that, I want to thank all of you and sort of formally adjourn today's meeting. Thank you and good night.
Thanks, everyone. Umar,
Thank you.
Brinda, Farooq Saab, Nadeem Saab, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Assalamu alaikum.
Thanks. Wa alaikum assalam.
Okay, Ravi.
Thank you, Nadeem.
Right. Lovely talk.
I think very illuminating.
Pardon?
I said, I, for one, did not know the extent and the kind of the problems until we listened to Brinda and Umar.
I knew a wee bit of it. I mean, with the staff I have and the talk we gave. But it's really deep, the problem is deep. You really have to take a lot of effort to get them out of it.
Yeah, which is where an organization like Rotary with a long-term view can begin to make a difference. But we can only help what these people are doing. We cannot substitute them.
No, and whatever little we do is still better than nothing.
Exactly, exactly.
Great. Great set of speakers, Ravi. Very, very enlightening. And I'm sure we should be able to work our way with them to kind of do a few projects together.
Yeah, I think so. We are actually working with all of them.
Right.
So it helps that we already have working relationships.
And we have a meeting, include me and Ravi.
Sure, Nadeem.
Okay. Chalo. Good night then. Good night to everybody.
Good night, Mahesh ji.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night, President.
Sadhwani ji.
Sir, I'm still reeling under the impact of what I've heard today. It's amazing that this is happening in the underbelly of our cities.
It's not even underbelly, literally 1 kilometer from Acropolis
Yeah.
is Rajendra Nagar and Ejipura.
Yeah.
26 or 30,000 families in very tightly knit communities. And these, Ramesh, are far better than the slums in other parts of the country. If you look at Eastern India, etc., these are actually, they are difficult situations, but nowhere
So we
as
have a
bad as
long
it
way
could.
to go, man. We have a long way to go in life. I tell you. Very disturbed, very disturbing.
No, but I think that also opens opportunities to what we can do.
Yeah.
These guys, the Mercy Mission people, Ramesh, if you recall when COVID started, BBMP would just do mass burials or mass burning. There was no individual, the families were not given back the bodies, etc. It was Mercy Mission who took on the responsibility of saying that we will take over those COVID succumbed dead bodies and give them a humane sort of departure,
Yeah.
by whatever means. And it took a lot of courage for these people. And I've seen these boys working in the slums relentlessly. They are there every day doing what they have to do.
President, I'm very proud of you, man, President, today.
Thank you, Ramesh.
My respects go up many notches today. Too good.
I have to say that the inspiration, the seed of this idea was laid by somebody who's still on this call. Because of his own humility, he wishes to remain anonymous for the time being.
So whoever it is, my salams to him also, boss.
Thank you. Let's take this forward. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, all
Good
of
night,
you.
President.
Night,
Take
my
care.
Learning
night,
experience.
Bye-bye.
Learning experience, it is good, and it will continue to bring more inspiration to do something specific.
Yes.
I feel so. It is worthwhile. Thanks, Ravi. Thanks.
Pleasure, Bhavesh ji. Thank you. Good night. Good night.